What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Tacon One podcast. I'm very excited to announce our first guest, John Hancock. He's a Marine veteran, documentary filmmaker, and the owner of a nonprofit that specializes in helping other veterans. Before we get started, I'd like to mention two sponsors for this first episode. The first is Gray Shadows Protection, an executive protection company here in Colorado that they're absolutely pure professionals. I've had the opportunity to work with them a few times, and they're definitely somebody you can trust with your executive protection and security needs. The second is Project Child Rescue, a nonprofit that specializes in rescuing victims of human trafficking and reuniting them with their families. So without further ado, enjoy this first episode of the Tacon One podcast. All right, John Hancock, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this, and I'm happy to help you kick off something that's going to be pretty badass. The podcast format is taking fire, and the more and more people that have credible stories and that can build podcasts and platforms to gain listeners and traction, the better. And so congratulations to you for doing that, and I look forward to being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks. It's kind of weird. Like, this is something like people have been pushing me to do for quite some time. I used to make like training videos and stuff, and I still do for the business, but a lot of people were like, man, you got to have your own YouTube channel, your own podcast. Like, it's something you got to do. So finally, I just buckled down and made it happen. And like I said, man, it was kind of weird. I posted on LinkedIn that I was going to start doing this, and I was like, if anybody has any suggestions, on who I should have on the show, send them my way. And almost immediately, this guy threw your name in the comments and was like, check out this dude's documentary. Check out this dude's, what he's got going on. He should be your first guest. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And found you and reached out, and everything worked out, man. So again, thank you so much for being the first one to do this with.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm stoked that someone else saw an opportunity and said, hey, this is something that aligns, and I think you would benefit. I think that's really cool. And I think if anything, it tells me that, at least what I had done for those things resonated with people, and it was for the right reason,
Yeah, for sure. So you're Marine, infantry Marine, and then you switched to HUMIT, but after you got out, you created the documentary, or you decided you were going to walk across country, see the Gold Star families of your deployment, which is crazy, by the way. Like, when I watched the documentary, I was like, wow, like the feelings and the emotion that came with that. It's nuts, man. So
yeah, it's a cry everyday experience.
I bet it was, man. So you did the documentary, and you got your nonprofit now where you're taking people out on long walks, and we'll touch base on that. What made you want to join the Marine Corps? Was it something you always wanted to do, or was it just something you were pushed into doing?
No. I was a Navy brat, man. I was born in Hawaii, and my dad was on submarines. Man, he's a Navy guy, and he was in the officer corps for the submarine corps, and ended up becoming an executive officer on, I think, the Von Steuben. And so he was on quite a few different subs when I was growing up. So I was always on subs, and I'd always been around some SEALs and then some Force Recon Marines. Guys that were on the boat with my dad, I didn't know any of them. And we were in some commissary in England, and I'd turned around and seen this just larger than life Marine. And he was dual cool stacked, right? So bubble and fucking wings, and
oh yeah.
I'm looking at him like, what is that? And Dad's like, that's Force Reconnaissance Marine. They're the most badass things on the planet. And I was like, I want to do that. From that day forward, it was just, I'm just trying to be a Marine. I was like, I didn't care about anything. So I hated high school. I was a pothead in high school. Didn't care. It was like, whatever, dude, I'm just get the stupid grades to the bare minimum. And then we're going to the Marine Corps. And that's what I ended up doing anyway. And so it kind of all worked out. But nice. Yeah, that's kind of the story of how it all happened. I wasn't forced into anything. If anything, I think my dad probably was a little bit more reticent that I was joining the Marine Corps and not applying myself through school to give myself other options. I was just like, no, I'm going to the Marine Corps.
Yeah. So you knew that's what you wanted.
He knew, I knew. everybody's just kind of like, okay, he's going to the Marine Corps.
Cool. So did you sign up to be an infantry Marine, or is that just how it?
I did. I got a real high score on my ASVAB, and the recruiter, I'm fortunate. My recruiter never lied to me. Yeah, like he didn't. It was crazy. And I've got, every Marine's got a story about a recruiter lying to him. And I'm over here going, shit, I don't. The guy looked at me and said, you can have any job in the Marine Corps. You don't need to be in the grunts. And I was like, yeah, but how am I going to get to reconnaissance and all of that if I don't go to the, I want to go to the, I want to go to the infantry. That's what I want to do. He called my mom and dad, had a sit down dinner with them at their house, brought a different recruiter to try to tell them to tell me to go do something in radar or whatever. And I just said no. And they were like, well, it's his choice. He wants to go to the infantry, going to the infantry. And so I joined the infantry, and then, I graduate boot camp September 7th of 2001. So 4 days before the towers fall.
Wow.
And he just like, okay, it was peacetime, and now we're in this weird, I don't know what we're doing. And
what was that feeling like?
I was on boot camp leave for that. So
yeah, what was that like, man? Like watching that and knowing like you're going somewhere.
I didn't realize I was going somewhere until we got to school infantry. I was still, I'm PFC, fresh out of boot camp, on boot camp leave for 10 days. I took the Greyhound bus from DC down to Camp Geiger in Lejeune for check-in for the infantry. And on our way down, we drove, because the DC Greyhound bus station ends up connecting right to 395. Then you 395 dump down to 95, and you start traveling south along the corridor. I knew we were going to pass by the Pentagon because I'm super familiar. I grew up in Maryland, right? And so I'm super familiar with where I am. I know that we're about to see the Pentagon. So I kind of told everybody on the bus, I was like, hey, you're about to see exactly where this plane went into the building. And everybody turned and looked, and there was this gaping hole, and it was the first time I had seen it. And then we just kept driving. I didn't have any, people were asking me questions on the bus. People were asking me questions all on leave. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know if you know how this works. I'm a PFC in the Marine Corps.
They didn't tell me anything.
You know more than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wild. But of course, me as a PFC in the Marine Corps, and I've got some ego behind me because I'm a Marine, right? Like, so I didn't necessarily answer their questions. I didn't answer anybody's question. I just tried to somehow tell them that we were awesome. Like, oh yeah, that's bad, but yeah, we'll get it back. I'm a Marine. We're gonna go handle that.
Yeah. I'm 18 years old. I know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been 18 for all of 5 months, and in that time, I've also become a Marine. Yeah, sure, I'm wise beyond my years.
Right. So, man, crazy. I talked to another Marine. He had joined, and he was like, look, man, I just joined the Marine Corps for like free college and stuff. I grew up poor, so like that was the only way I was going to be able to get college. And same thing, he was on boot leave when the towers fell, and he was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to earn my wage. Like, this changes things.
Well, it changed everything too, right? Because it changed the entire GI Bill function and structure for people post GWAT, and hell, everybody went to college. I mean, you got to go to college, and you got to go to college with full room board and a stipend.
Right.
And, that was probably my downfall, because I had so you go to the Marine Corps and then you get out and you've got this GI Bill. And I heard about the post 9/11 GI Bill when I was in Uganda in 2007. And some colonel had showed up at my house, and he was like, hey, I'm just traveling through. I heard you guys were in this area. I want to stop in, check in, say hello. I'm just on like tourism shit. And I'm like, neat, cool, come on in. So he comes in, and he ends up telling us about this post 9/11 GI Bill and how it's in the works, and it'll be done by the end of that year. And then, by the end of 2009 or by the end of 2008, it should be rolling out for first semesters 2009. I was like, wow, that's really neat, because I am slated to get out towards the end of 2009. So I started tracking this, seeing if it was really viable. And I was like, holy shit, I could I could go to college. I wanted to. I always thought that was something I wanted to do. So I got out and used that post 9/11 GI Bill. But those benefits, man, like GWAT guys got benefits that, Vietnam didn't get. And
Yeah, it's Montgomery, right?
yeah,
Montgomery.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it still ended up helping a lot, but it wasn't a full freight coverage.
Right. Yeah.
So
So you joined the Marine Corps. You wanted to be a grunt. You went to be a grunt. Did you go straight to Iraq, or how did that work for you?
no, we did. So I went to 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and then so I got chopped to them. This is crazy. I got chopped. I had orders to Hawaii, and I was like, sweet, going K-Bag. That's great. Would love to go to Hawaii, go back to where I was born, see where I was born, live there, surf. Awesome. And then 2 days before that, our orders got changed. I guess they had a very significant drug bust out in the West Coast, and 2-4 was running some meth labs and shit. They had a 90-person drug bust. And you're looking at this thing going, I'm sorry, what? So we get there, and there were 90 people were gone from that battalion, and we ended up going to Okinawa first, right? Because I get there in the end of 01, and then by middle 02, we're heading over towards Okinawa for the 31st MU for the UDP, right? The unit deployment program out there. So we flew over to Okinawa, and then when we get there, there's grumblings about war and about what we're doing, and those grumblings are starting to get a little bit more and more loud. And then all of a sudden, there's things coming out about, hey, how we're going to start chopping early to leave from Okinawa to go be part of Task Force Tarawa and then go hit Iraq. And so we had an advon party come in, an advanced party come in and start to change over all serialized gear and do the normal turnover thing that every unit does, right?
Yeah.
Here's my weapons, give me your weapons, blah, blah, blah. And so they started to come in and do that, realizing that the economy of force that it was the opportunity cost was too large to try to do that. And instead, why not just send the unit that would have come here over to Iraq and then just keep these guys on Okinawa? So that's what we did. We were 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, always known as 2-4, got a real cool moniker called 2-4 No War. And so we watched the invasion from the boat, and we pumped out and started doing the Pacific and some of the smaller seas throughout, with units going all the way down to Australia, through to Thailand and some other things, mostly bilateral training. Operations, show of force exercises, just in the area, because that's what, that's all we're doing.
Right.
We'd had some sort of cool mission come down, that Fox Company, the company I was part of, was going to do an amphibious raid into the island of Holo to fight the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the Abu Sayyaf. And that, I guess, the Prime Minister of the Philippines got wind of that operation and politely declined our invitation. And so we didn't do anything. We just sat there and watched. And so when we got back from, we got stop loss, stop moved, right? And so we just got stuck on the rock in Oki. And then we probably came home right around the same time everybody else was coming back from OIF-1. And so, you got these PSCs and Lance Corporals that are just dying to wear their chucks and anything just so they can show off this warfighter fruit salad on their chest.
Yeah.
And here we are, 2-4 guys with like national defenses and good cookies. And we're like, oh, this sucks.
Well, yeah, man. And then like one of the worst things you can do to a grunt unit is not let them go and do what they want to do, man. Because when they do take those chains off and let loose those leashes, man, it's brutal.
An infantry company will decimate all. A Marine infantry company will decimate all. You give them the gear and the mission, and they will fuck shit up for you.
They will handle it.
But the problem is when you just put those guys on cages and then say, hey, watch this war from here.
Yeah.
And we got in so much trouble out there, dude. We were flipping cars and doing nonsense, like breaking shit on base. It got bad. It got real bad.
Yeah.
We ended up getting like quarantined, and There's like, you can't be out past like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You can't travel in groups more than two. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad. So we got locked down so much. It was almost like we would catch Liberty. We'd catch Libo every now and again, and then we're coming off groundation, and so
Right.
we're all allowed to go do it. And then by the end of that same weekend, and most times by the end of that same night, everybody had already heard the story of something else that happened. We're like, "Fuck, well, might as well just all go to bed because we're gonna be able to go out and do anything again."
Right.
So yeah, we were just stuck, and that sucked. So we got back, and then those guys, everybody in 2-4, we were all just, and we're gonna get it, we're gonna get there, no worries. And we prayed for war, like all young, dumb grunt war fighters want. And we're all just, it's gonna happen, and then it happened, right? And you go to Ramadi on this SASO mission, this stability and support operations mission. Oh, how's your water after we just blew up everything? Like, all right, okay, who are your water engineers in this town? Let's go talk to them. And hey, can we start building aqueducts and blah, 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 right? That's kind of the entire mission platform that we were on,
Right.
post OIF, post in, a mission accomplished. And so, okay. And so we get in there and start doing that. And then almost immediately, I just started seeing weird things that they didn't tell you about in training, and weird interactions that weren't even modeled in training with others. And I was like, okay, they don't really like us here at all.
Right.
And I was catching that sentiment more than anything. And I had gone to a Arabic immersion program so that I could kind of learn Arabic the best of my ability. Thank God I learned language as well, so that helped me. But ultimately, I was picking up on words and picking up on things that people were saying, and I was hearing. I was like, well, that sounds odd to me. Like, that doesn't sound happy. And so it started as more or less, I was like, I don't think people like us here. And then I think Fox Company, we took the first casualties in Ramadi on March. It would have been early March, and it was a kid named PFC Dang, and an RPG went right through. We didn't have armor, right? We had like
Right.
metal doors that went halfway, and we were sitting on sandbags and had like bomb blankets draped over the side, just trying somewhere. Like, oh, we'll see what happens. And then RPG went right through the driver's side window and just took his head off. And then after that, I realized, I was like, okay, this is really bad. This is going to get worse. And then it all got really bad on April 6th for Golf Company and Echo Company. And then April 7th, I found myself and my squad in that area on the government center. All of the maneuver elements were pinned down or couldn't get to a casualty out in the east of where they were calling from. We were still a maneuver element at the time and had the ability. We asked for permission from Fox Company leadership. They said no. Luckily, my lieutenant was with me and said, screw it, we're going anyway. So we went. And so we went out and ended up linking up with that squad that was pinned down, and then ended up helping them, and then moving with the rest of Golf Company for that entire day. But that entire city started to fall around April 6th to April 10th, and that would be called the Battle of Ramadi. I guess what would be effectively known as the Battle of Ramadi, even though the entirety of the deployment would see 30, 35 dead, almost 300 something wounded. So you're looking at a 26% casualty rate.
Wow. Now,
So that's deployment number 2, coming from the first deployment where we just watched everybody. And when you get back and you hear all these stories of all these guys and, your age guys, just different units, and they're like, yeah, it's a piece of cake, no big issue. Like, they're super scared of this. They're really scared of this, or like, we do this tactic or we do that. And as we started like learning through those tactics and training them, when we got there into Ramadi, the first time we got there, we realized that no other unit was there. And there was the big red one, right? Army, with the big one on their thing. That's all I know. They were over at Junction City, which would then be called later would be called Camp Ramadi. They were over there, but they gave us kind of a left seat, right seat when we got there. And they said, hey, what do you guys want to do? And I said, well, we'll just get in the Bradleys and then you can drop us off somewhere. And we'll do a foot patrol for, 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the night. And then you can pick us up over here.
Right.
And as soon as I said that, the Bradley commander was like, you want to do what? And I was like, this is going to be a problem. So their contact, or I guess their not ROE, but I guess their actions upon contact in case they were to receive fire was to uh, get back to the Bradley and level the building. I was like, that's great, but that's not really going to work for what the mission is. So
Right.
we
Yeah.
kind of got to be in amongst the populace and in their homes and asking them questions and trying to build relationships with them. So I realized that was going to be a problem. And I realized that we were probably in for a really big eye opening versus what an invasion looks like versus a counterinsurgency.
Right. Now, because of the things that you guys did, we had a whole workup prior to deployment. Like, they would send us out for a month for enhanced Mojave Viper. We had a whole, we were playing war games of what to expect when we deployed. What was, I guess, did you have a workup, or was this like learn on the fly because it was so early on? What was that like?
Yeah, our workups were similar in nature to ours were just very truncated. We didn't know much, and so they established whatever SOPs they had established during OIF1, what they had seen, what the takeaways were. Those units came back, and that doctrine was sort of written, shared, and then experienced together. And so we did have in our workup package before we went, we did have a boatload of convoy operations, a boatload of mount operations, and a boatload of trolling operations, and then just actions upon contact from each. And so that was all we were doing. There was really nothing else yet to really focus on. The IED thing had started rearing its head. We didn't know much about it yet, so we had. I think the last thing we were doing right before we left Ramadi was like 5s and 25s, right? Like
Yeah.
old school shit where you're like, well, you're just going to walk up on it and either get blown up or you see it and you'll run back and say, hey, it's over there. So, I mean, and that's the evolution of the battlefield, right? Like the infantryman is going to suffer a lot because of that, because you are the test bed for all combat. And
Yep.
so you're not only experiencing it all, you're trying to relay it to others and how you did it so that they can do things. And it's just the nature of warfare changes so fast that anything that we did out there was probably superfluous, maybe, except for just the fact that we're doing lots of repetitions and we're training it so that we could employ it pretty rapidly upon contact.
Yeah. So you get to Ramadi and immediately start taking casualties, kind of getting, in your face up close and personal of what a combat deployment is like. How many casualties total were taken during that deployment?
During the deployment, it's 35. So it's 34 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman. And then it's 297 or 302 wounded.
Wow. So a lot. That's
Yeah. And so you kind of look at it this way, right? Like, sure, that's probably a 26% rate when you look at it out of a fully TO'd or training and operational battalion of, let's say, 1,700 men. We didn't have that going to Ramadi. At best, we probably held down, 105 to 110 per company, plus, a little bit of leadership in there. And then probably, a 75% stake at everything across the board. We probably deployed with something more akin to about 1,300 men,
wow.
13,
Okay.
14. And so when you look at those numbers, that number goes higher all of a sudden, and it's a little bit higher of a casualty rate, but that's nothing to toot a horn at.
Right. So yeah, you make it through this deployment best you can. Well, what's next for you?
Well, I didn't intend to do anything until I had gotten home and did laundry the first night. My folks didn't make it out East Coast to West Coast and all that, and try to be there to hit a moving target of a welcome home. I was like, guys, I'll do a couple things around the base for a day or two, and then I'll hop on leave and come back. So don't worry about coming to see me home. So it was easy. I was alone, and I was like, great. Everybody else has family. I can go get laundry done and get some shit done.
Yeah.
So I went in, grabbed my barracks room, did laundry, and as soon as I was doing laundry, a number fell out of my pocket, and I recalled this happening back in April. Since I met a guy, we were pinned down, and a Suburban rolled up out of nowhere. It had an orange placard in the side of it, and dumped off, I don't know, 3 crates of ammunition, and just assorted. He said, you got any small arms other than 5.56? You got any 9mm or anything? I said, yeah, I've got 2 9s. And so he threw a box of 9mm out, and he said, hey, there's 6 guys down the alley that way. There's a few more over here, and there's some over this way. And he left. And I was like, I don't know who the fuck this guy was. He had a rifle that was about, I don't know, like this big. And I'm like, all right. So that guy was way cool. And we went on with the day. And to my shock, every area or everything he had called out as we were moving was coming up true, or coming up like real close. And we ended up making it through this hellacious gunfight that lasts, 12 hours. I think my squad ran dry on ammunition. I know I ran dry on ammunition twice. I can remember one big refit for the entire squad. It was a 12-hour gunfight. It was no joke. But when we got back, there was that same guy with his little Suburban out there parked out in the hinterland next to a fire barrel, and he's smoking a cigar. And I walked up. I left my squad. I said, I got to organize us a ride back, and I got to go talk to this guy. So I went over and said, hey, man, who are you? How do I get your job? And he said, would you believe it if I said I was a Marine? And I was like, no fucking way. And he shows me a Marine Corps ID card with him in a beard and long hair. And I'm like, how do I get your fucking job, dude? He said, hey, make it out of here and call this number, and they'll put you through their paces and see if you're worth anything. And if you are, then they'll take you, or they'll run you through a program and go through school, blah, blah, blah. So I got back. I totally forgot about that in that entire conversation. And then I'm doing laundry. That number falls out of a pocket. And I was like, holy shit, I got to call that number. So I called that number the next morning, and some duty NCO answers and goes, who are you trying to talk to? And I was like, I don't know. I'm trying to find the guys that are doing the weird spook shit, and they've got beards and long hair. And he goes, oh, you need this number. It used to be that number, but we changed offices. They moved somewhere else. And I was like, oh, okay. So they gave me a new number. I called. They gave me a bunch of guff. I finally got a meeting to come in and talk and say hello and see who the fuck I am and see if, what's what. And they've got an entire recruiting, I guess, progress that they work through. And so I went and started going through this whole progress, and it worked out. They said yes. I passed the board, which is hellacious and very secret. And then just a bunch of things you got to do. And then I went to school at Damneck, where the MagTef CI class is, and went over there. I think I graduated class 0502. So I graduated second class of 2005. So probably right around June.
Very cool. So, and we're talking about HUMINT, correct? Human intelligence.
Yeah. So this is the human intelligence piece. This is where I end up changing and becoming a human intelligence, counterintelligence specialist. So for lack of, I guess it's for ease of it, right? It's just, I'm a source handler and an interrogator, and I'm, through my qualifications and certifications, I've been privied and able to do really cool shit on behalf of the United States government, outside of the scope of what normal Marine Corps counterintelligence does, given that I was able to go through some advanced trainings, one of which I'm now an instructor for.
Right. Yeah. Very cool, man. I actually got to be a part of the CI HUMINT final exercise out in Damneck.
Oh, yeah.
And man, it was, I don't know how much we can really give about that training, but like Navy SEALs, all kinds of cool people were there, man. Like it was a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We training.
When I went through, that didn't exist. And we you did something else and it led up to this thing that was gonna be basically a mission. And you're like, yeah. And then they're like, all right, congratulations, you graduated.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't have that then. And we
Yeah.
didn't know what we needed for that. None of the training efficacy was lost early on. It just, we didn't get to see the fruits of our labor like they do now.
Yeah.
And that's also a really cool experience.
Oh man, that was by far one of the best trainings I've been to. Like
Yeah.
just super cool people. Like you said, I mean, dudes that do not look like Marines are running around doing cool shit. Like it's a good time, man. Navy SEALs are there, all kinds.
Yeah. We work with them extensively. So, and yeah, we've had quite a few come through our courses as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's cool, man. And Dam Neck's a cool place. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's neat. It's small. It's there's only a few things there. All of those things are designed to be awesome, and that's about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Nice portion of the beach to run on. And
Oh, it's one of the best strands of beach. I love that section.
uh,
It's so great. And, there's never anybody on it. It's
right.
just,
Yeah.
it's your private beach. It's great.
Yeah. It's super cool, man. I definitely miss that out there. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long did you do the human stuff for?
So I ended up in human for a second enlistment, right? But I enlisted early, I guess. So I ended up doing almost about 5 years with them. So I ended up getting out at the end of 2009. And in that time, I had gone out on my first deployment with as a singleton with one other guy. We had gone out and dual supported or singularly supported two companies of 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. So we went out and did that in Fallujah in '05, and then I came back and then immediately chopped to the 26 MEU, and then did a MEU out, and most of that was a med float, followed into hit the ditch, and then we were in Africa for some time. I was in Kenya for a month or two, and then we ended up in Kuwait. Coincidentally, that was the same MEU that the first group of MARSOC operators left from. I think it was Fox Company, and they were under Major Galvin up in Afghan when all that shit went wrong, and they got PNG'd from the country, and so MARSOC came back onto the boat, and then they floated back with us. So I think they left us when we got to Spain, and then they rejoined us in Kuwait, and we were like, "Whoa, you guys shouldn't be here right now." And
Right.
then we started hearing everything over the news. We were like, oh shit, this isn't great. So that was that deployment. And then came home from that, went to something called ASOC, which was Advanced Source Operations course. And then which is the course I teach now. And then following that course, I went over to CJTF HOA and was on the HOA Joint Task Force for a while out in Uganda. And then after that, I left and was invited to go over and help with a program in SOCOM and work with some of the big boys over there and do a really specific mission set out of Iraq again. So I did that. And then decided after that, I've kind of done everything I needed to do. I got all the way to the top of this spear, and I'm with the needles on the front of the spear. This is really amazing. And now I want to go see if I can try my hand at school. You know what I mean? So that's all the deployments inside the human side of the house. And then, me leaving.
Yeah. So you decide what made you decide you were going to get out? Was it?
I think it was still the school.
Yeah.
I think it was still school and my desire to want to get a degree. And my desire to want to continue to speak Arabic and Russian. And so I knew that I could do that at college. So I wanted to do that there and get away from serious battlefield manipulation and move into something that wasn't so damn hostile.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the human guys, for people who don't know, very secretive. We had a bunch of human guys that were with us in Afghanistan, and they would scurry around, do their own thing, and then call us if they needed help, like snatching a dude up and bringing him back to talk to him, to him. And I guess, as we start rolling into you getting out of the Marine Corps and moving into the documentary piece, that's a tough life, man. Like you went from a hellish deployment in Iraq, in Ramadi, to now doing human stuff where, I mean, you're very close to these,
Yeah,
bad people who want to hurt other people. And
yeah,
that had to
it's
take a toll on you.
it did. It absolutely did, and it would come back full circle later. But yeah, I didn't know how much of a toll it had taken on me and what it had destroyed in me for later in my life. And it was hard to. I'm still feeling it some days. I mean, hell, I just had a conversation with my wife the other day about certain things that I've seen over there, and now that I have a daughter, and how fucking scared I am, and it's all valid because it's all things that I've seen and experienced, and I know it's out there and it lurks and it's evil. Um, but there was a lot, man. There's a lot, and I continually deployed because I wasn't married, didn't have any kids. I very much enjoyed my job. I loved it, and I was good at it. And I don't toot my horn at that, but like I was good at it, and I very much enjoyed proving, because human intelligence is it's such a difficult int, right? With every other int, right? You got SIGINT, MASINT, OSINT, yeah, there's a bunch of them, but everything is so much more technical. Everything is so much more cut and dry, right? With humans, it's not. And so the problem with human intelligence operators is a lot of them believe, one, they either believe their sources, or two, they believe or they think too highly of themselves. And so they'll state unequivocally that, yes, this is true, or yes, this is good info. And it isn't. And it doesn't turn out to be good. And then it gets a bad taste in that commander's mouth for human intelligence. And so I was always very happy with every deployment I've ever been on. At the end of it, every commander I've ever worked for or worked with has said, thank you for showing me what human intelligence is supposed to look like. And that was always a really good thing for me. And that felt good, knowing that if you just keep doing the right things the right way, with, results oriented in mind, I think you're just going to keep doing that. And so that was great for me. But also I didn't realize the damage it was doing to me, because I am just constantly going on really fucked up deployments, going to really, really crazy areas and hunting bad people. And that's all human intelligence was at the time. It was manhunting for the GWAT, and it was either OIF or OEF, and it didn't matter. It was a different place, a different time, and it was a different bad guy. And
Yeah.
so, in Uganda, it's Joseph Kony and the Lord's Resistance Army. And then outside of, Kenya, it was Sheikh Awais and the Council of the Islamic Courts as they were rushing to the Comoros, and just crazy stories and crazy, crazy fights with people that you didn't think you were getting in fights with. Because I thought the fight was, early on, I thought the fight was in Iraq or Afghan. And that's just not the case, because that real global war on terrorism was really an attempt to thwart a lot of movement across continents.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people don't like us out there. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people do, but there's a boatload that don't like us. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you end up getting out of the Marine Corps and doing what most of us do, is try and squeeze into college and act like a normal person. And
Yeah.
how did that work out, man?
Yeah, it didn't work out. It didn't go well. Dude, it didn't go well. Jesus, it didn't go well.
Yeah.
The first day I go to class, I'm already 2 weeks late for class, man. Like I was in gunfights while students are showing up to orientation, and I'm still like like I checked out of the Marine Corps in 3 days because
Wow.
newsflash, and there's probably a statute of limitations that I've definitely passed. I highly doubt the Marine Corps is coming calling for me. But the commander at the time of 2nd Intel Battalion, I walked in with my checkout sheet, and I was kind of doing it in reverse. I just wanted to get the signatures of the people on the way, so I didn't have to go back. I just get them and fucking move on with my life. I had already phoned in Tamp and Tap from a friend of mine who just wrote my name on the thing. And, I had 2 or 3 extra gas masks, so NBC just signed off. They didn't care. Yeah, so I just kind of like run through it. And he didn't I walk into his office. I say, "Hey, sir, my name's Staff Sergeant Hancock. I'm getting out of the Marine Corps today. I just need your signature." And he goes, "I don't have time for quitters, and you can cut your fucking hair." I was like, "Oh, all right." So I walked out and I forged his fucking name, and then I walked to pack, and then I handed it to him. They handed me a DD-214. And then as I drove back by Second Intel Battalion, I threw him a big old bird. And he
Yeah.
was standing outside with the sergeant major, and I was like, "Yeah, all right, man. Like, you're not gonna stop me from getting out of the Marine Corps, and I'm not gonna go cut my hair. Like, whatever, man. You're an asshole. Like, you know how many deployments I've just been on for you?
Right.
Like, you don't know who I am because, like, I'm not on your rosters."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do a little research, find out. But
It was just a bummer, man. So yeah, I had a bad taste in my mouth leaving, but I left very quickly. And then after I left, I rolled right in. I got up to school the next day, walked right into class. All my professors are very cool. I've been contacting them the whole time. They're like, "Yep, here's what you've missed. No big issue." And yeah, for the first year, dude, it was easy. And I've dean's list all the time. No big issue. It was fine. But then I guess probably around like year 2, maybe year 1.5, I started finding some friends or mutual acquaintances that, were palatable for more than a few hours, right? Because you start hanging out with college people and it's like, oh, dude, like the things that come out of college kids' mouths they're half baked because, they've got zero idea of what the real world is. And so, yeah, they've got an idea. And maybe they even have a pretty decent argument towards it, but it devolves very quickly into ums and ahs and just stupid acronyms, and it just didn't work well for me. And so I found a few people that I liked, and all civilian types, and hung out with them and tried to move forward, and really just didn't, and found bars more than anything, and just the ease at which it was for me to just go, "Oh, I'm not going to class today, but I'll just walk right down the street and hit the pub," because the pub's 150 feet from my house, and the campus is 200 meters. So I'm like, "Oh, it's easier to go there than it is there."
yeah.
And every time I go there, all I do is I bring something up, and people say, "Oh, well, you don't know that, or you couldn't possibly know that about this." I mean, I was such an idiot. I went from leaving the Marine Corps and leaving the global war on terrorism and injected myself into collegiate America where everyone was telling me that I had no idea about anything Islam related. And here I am in like an Arab studies major with a Russian minor, eh, but I don't know anything.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right. And that's just what it was. It was, if you were to say something even remotely true that they didn't want to hear, man, they just, damn it, it crushed it. So I was like, I'm done with this. So I just, I kept signing up for classes, and then I just wouldn't go. And I was like, I'll just keep getting the GI Bill, and then just keep, drinking and doing that because it's easier. It's easier than listening to that. It's easier than walking across the mall, and it says, the big University of Maryland Mall with the fountains, and it's pretty iconic and pretty famous, I guess. And a massive banner from one side of the mall to the other, like, "Get the fuck out of Afghanistan," like, "Fuck veterans," or like, "Fuck U.S. Army." And I'm like, I I'm over it, man. I'm over it. Like, there's no conversation to be had. It's everybody just calling everybody baby killers. And I'm like, I'm good, man. So
Yeah.
I left it, and I phoned it in, and, kept getting fucking bullshit grades on like art classes or some nonsense. And then I kept doing my Arab language classes, and I always got good grades in those, in any language class, but anything else I wasn't going to. And then it all kind of came to a head after the first DUI. I was like, okay, like, I got a DUI, got it, no worries. They did probation before judgment. I got to walk on eggshells, just don't do anything bad for a year, and then you're good. And then, almost a year to the day of the first one, I pick up a second DUI. And that's the story that's kind of weird, because I think the cop lost the paperwork for a few days. I think they took it easy on me, and they said, "Well, you were," when I got to the station or whatever, they were like, "You were like 11 days away from being off probation." I'm like, "Yeah, just throw me in fucking jail, dude. I'm a piece of shit. I'm not worth shit. Just fucking lose me in the system." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was just bent. And they said, "All right, hang on a second." And then, I don't know, I just got driven home at 4 a.m. by
Wow.
this cop. And he had pulled me over 400 meters from my home, right? Because I ran a stop sign. And luckily, I've never been a guy that, hit a car or hit a person or hurt anybody in a DUI. But man, that's a dumb fucking move. But, here I am and I've done 2 of them. And now the cops drop me off at home and he goes, just go in, go up, sober up, get your car in the morning because it's up there, and then move on with your life. And I didn't do that. I decided instead I would stare at myself in the mirror and hate myself. And that's when I realized I didn't have to be on the planet anymore. And I was probably one of the larger pieces of shit that's ever existed. So I just started swallowing pills, man. And it didn't matter what it was. It was just open the pill bottle, just chuck it in, and then just gulp water. And I was doing that for about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, I guess. There's everything in the medicine cabinet. And my stomach started to cramp, and I was like, holy shit, I'm really doing this. And I decided, fuck it. So I ran up to my car, which was 400 meters away from my house. And I got in it. The cops were nowhere to be found. I figured they'd be sitting on my car, waiting for my dumb drunk ass to come back and get the car. But they weren't. So I got in the car, drove the fuck off, and I drove from College Park, Maryland to Baltimore, Maryland to the VA hospital there. And that's a 45-minute drive, and I cooked it and got there. And the only thing I had to show for my service, I bought an Audi S4 after I left because I had just so much money left over. Like, I never got to spend any money. I was all on deployments.
Right.
So I bought a super nice car. So I took that car and drove it, and I made it to Baltimore in 17 minutes.
Wow.
And I fell into the front door, told the lady what I did. And then when I woke up, I was handcuffed to the bed, and I had my stomach pumped, and they were now admitting me into the voluntary inpatient program at the VA following a suicidal attempt. So I did that for, I think, about 5 days. I think I got out on like day 3 for good behavior, I guess. But in that time, I'd seen a man named Mike Vitti, and he was walking across the country. I was in Baltimore, and every year the Army-Navy game is either played in Philly or in Baltimore. This year, so that would have been 2014, it was playing in Baltimore. So a lot of local news stations were interviewing this guy down in Virginia who had already completed so much of this walk, and his intent was to end at the Army-Navy game. And he had played for West Point when he had gone through the academy. And so I was like, holy shit, who is this guy? I looked him up, started learning about it, and I was like, I got to do this. And that's the impetus for me wanting to walk across the country.
So at that time, from the documentary, I think several of your friends, gave little comments on, you were just kind of this crazy person to hang out with. Like, you didn't care at that time whether you lived or died, living on the edge. At what point did you know something wasn't right?
I ran from the cops one night with a buddy in the car, and we cooked it, and I got away, and I don't know how, but I guess I'm a good driver. But yeah, I definitely did way too much squirrely shit that night, and that was I've done a lot of really dumb things, but once I realized that I had done something that I mean, if they knew who I was or knew where I was or figured out who I was, then, there's a SWAT team at your door. And I was like, wow, that was probably single-handedly one of the dumber things that I've ever done. But it didn't, that was more or less like, all right, you got away with it. Like, just chill the fuck out. That wasn't really like, hey, things got to change. It's really got to change when, you're handcuffed to the bed and your mom and dad are on the side of a bed. And you're there and you're in your most vulnerable state. You're like, hello to the 2 people who loved me and gave me life, and I'm sitting in this bed because I'm trying to fucking take it.
Wow. Yeah. So when you saw the dude who was walking across the country, what was it that inspired you? Like, at that point in time, did you knew you wanted to do this walk? and what the intent was behind it, or what was the,
There's
I
no
guess, the
intent.
idea?
I just wanted to go. I just wanted to walk and meet with the guys I served with. And so as soon as I got out of that off the 6th floor of the mental ward of the VA hospital, probably like a day later, on my own recognizance, I guess. And then I was mandated to some sort of intensive outpatient program. I think it was like 4 days a week. I'd show up at the Baltimore VA hospital for, 3 hours a day of group counseling, followed by breakout sessions and blah, 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 and something else. And it was just, that was the way it went for probably about a month. And in that month, I just decided, I was like, well, screw it. I had a buddy of mine who had a mountain bike that I had fallen off a truck, and I was like, yeah, man, I'll buy it from you. And he goes, yeah, dude, it's $100. And so I bought this $100 mountain bike, which was really a giant full suspension badass mountain bike. And so I used this thing for the next, I don't know, 10 months. And I rode a mountain bike everywhere. And I went from 308 pounds to 198 pounds. And then I decided, okay, now that I'm down to a manageable weight again, like my Marine Corps weight, I'm going to go walk cross country now. And there was no desire to make a documentary. That shit wasn't even a thought in my head. I was just making those stupid little Facebook videos to keep people updated. And ultimately, I had started a GoFundMe because I had probably enough money to do probably 3/4 of the walk, but I just didn't have enough to finish it out, I didn't think. And so I was, I think I was raising $4,000 or $5,000, I think, and it ultimately ended up going something to like, over the course of the entire walk, it ended up raising something like $18,000. Well, I was just floored by that. And so I kind of used all that money to help other guys, and I would cook for them when I got there. And certain bills, like certain guys had like really outstanding bills and some things that were, embarrassing to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, listen, like this isn't my money. This is going to help you. So how do we help you? And so that's really what I did. But the documentary didn't even come to even be an idea until the filmmaker kind of sees me on all his Facebook feeds, because we're mutual friends with so many people. He went to high school with me and graduated a year before me. We never knew each other. He was a soccer jock and I was a pothead. So, I mean, those two don't mix. We're
Right.
not hanging out. And then you realize later on in life, you're like, no, you were a soccer jock and a pothead, but you're just a jerk. Because you're a jock and I was a stoner, and that's what that is. And it's high school and it never ends and it's ridiculous.
Right.
But that's really kind of it just hit a little bit different. And once Brian got involved and said, hey man, I'd like to feel you out and feel out this endeavor. This is, kind of what I'm thinking. I said, okay, I fly back to Maryland, off this trip. I think I've got like 3 or 4 different proposed flybacks that I have to do over the course of the trip. And I would just stop where I was, fly back, do whatever I had to do, VA appointments and nonsense, because I was still going through like the comp and pen bullshit and trying to get rated. After Baltimore had burned my records in 2011, I think. Yeah, they burned my records in 2011. So I had to start all over again, but no one's ever been in jail for that. And that really blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. That to this day, I'm like, wow, man, nobody went to jail. Nobody.
That's a hard one.
So, but yeah, I was like, okay, we'll meet up on the next time I return home. And I think I flew back from Lubbock, Texas to go and then fly back. And in that time I had a VA appointment and an extra day. So I said, sure, let's link up. And Brian and I sat in his basement. He turned it into a studio. And then we interviewed for about 2 hours. And he said, yeah, I think there's something here, and I'd like to start following you on your walk. And so we kind of moved through a ish plan of what my walk would look like, or my route, because the route would change daily or weekly depending on who said, hey, I live over here. And I'm like, oh shit. Well, then I'll go that way and then I'll come back this way. And so it was very evolutionary at times. So he would fly out and meet me. And so he was like, all right, I'll meet you in Nebraska. I'll meet you in probably South Dakota. I'll probably meet you in Wyoming. I'll meet you in Washington. And then I'll definitely meet you in Oregon. And then we'll be down the coast together for, 10 days or something towards the end. And so those are the trips we planned out. And then he did that and flew out to the middle of nowhere, puddle jumper airports in the middle of nowhere, and then get a rental car and stuff an amount of camera gear I've never seen in my life.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And just stuff an ungodly amount of camera gear in a car and then drive out on these roads and try to find me. It was wild. And
Wow.
that's what you do. And then as soon as he find me, he's like, all right, let's start filming. And he goes, where's the most beautiful place you were in the past 2 weeks? Because that's what we figured we could cover that driving in like a day and a half is my 2-week walk rate, right? Which ends up being somewhere around 400, 500 miles. And you're like, yeah, we can cover that in a day. So no big issue. So he's like 2 weeks before, what's the best thing? We're here. Okay, we're driving back there. You're going to walk it again. We're going to film it. Like, okay. And then, before he would leave, he'd go, all right, I think there's like 2 or 3 really badass places up this way. Let's go check them out. And it's not like, hey, they're like 20 feet away. It's like, hey, we're going to the Badlands. And you're like, oh, fuck, we're driving to the Badlands so that I can see it and then walk through it. And then he's going to turn around and drop me back off where he found me so that I don't screw up my mileage. And then I get to walk everything I've already seen that I have to walk. So sometimes that was cool. And sometimes that was really horrible because sometimes had to walk the mountain like twice.
Right, man. So I just want to point out, like, you had to fly back to Maryland for these VA appointments. You had somebody with a car who was flying out, meeting you. I mean, you had the opportunity to quit this at any time and just say, oh, yeah, you know what? Never mind. What kept you going?
I think the first quit was 2 weeks in, and I called my mom and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't, and I was a ball of mess. I was fucking crying and sobbing and my feet were just smoked. I hadn't prepped my feet correctly for this thing. And I don't think you ever really can prep your feet for what you're about to do. If you're about to crush America on a through hike, there's no amount of prep that works for that, because at the end of the day, I got blisters all the way until I got onto the PCT. So
Wow.
I got blisters for 4,000 miles. That's just the nature of the beast, time, distance, weight, and friction. That doesn't equal good times for your feet. So, I was probably really messed up in week 2, right by Fort AP Hill, right down there in Virginia off 301. And I was ready to quit and called them. And mom said, yeah, I'll come pick you up. It'll take me about 3 hours to come get you, 4 hours. And I'm like, that's humbling. And then after that, I didn't want to quit anymore because I was given an out. And I think I've been given an out almost everywhere along my life. And in some way, shape, or form, or maybe I've taken an out somewhere. And I knew I didn't want to take an out on this one. So I said, okay, yeah, that's great. I'll call you tomorrow if my mind changes. And I just didn't call her. And then I just kept going. And then I kept meeting with more and more people and more brothers and more Gold Star families. And then it just became so much of a bigger thing to me that I didn't want to quit it anymore. It was so fucking gratifying. And it was just so peaceful. It's peaceful, there's days at a time I didn't see anybody, like days. And it was perfect. And, you're just walking along and all of a sudden some car is out on some road in the middle of no man's land in South Dakota. And he just pulls over, and he turns out to be a Marine. And he's like, hey, stop what you're doing. You're coming with me. You're going to spend the night at my house. I'll feed you, clothe you. You can wash clothes, and then I'll send you right back out tomorrow, the next day, or where you were. And you can keep going from there. And that happened in every state I went to.
Wow.
In every state I went to. And it happened to every state I went to because of the Marines lived in every state I went to. But it also happened by the civilian populace, people that didn't know me because of the news. I guess the news stations that had been doing a bunch of stuff on me. And so the local news had been throwing out, hey, there's this Marine starting in Maryland, and now he's in Estacada, Oregon. And people would find me and they would like hand me money or hand me food or like take pictures with me. It was wild. And none of that really gave me, like, none of the, like, the attention seeking thing was anything cool to me. But the random people that would find me on the road and say, "Hey, I saw your story, and you know, my dad's a Marine or I'm a Marine and this is what we're doing." That was really cool to see.
Wow. Now, meeting a Gold Star family or spouse or mom, dad of somebody that was KIA is not a comfortable feeling. It's rather awkward. How did you cope with that? Was it the first one difficult and then it was easy from there? Or?
No, I didn't know how to do it. And I don't think Nina did either. Nina Schrage is the mom of Dustin Schrage, and he was one of our scout swimmers that drowned in the Euphrates on an amphib mission we were running one night. We didn't plan anything. We had talked a few times. I kept her abreast of the information, like, "Hey, I'm heading this way," and she was watching shit on Facebook and like, "Oh yeah, he'll be here in a week," you know, and that was really cool. But when we got there, as soon as I got there, we hugged. Nina smoked at the time, so I smoked a cigarette with her on the back porch, and then she was like, "Hey, let's go out to the beach pub and have a beer and talk." And we went out, and we didn't even get a beer, but we grabbed coffee. We sat on the beach, and within, I don't know, man, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we're talking about the deep, dark stuff. And it wasn't uncomfortable. It was so easy. And it felt so like familial and trusted. And so any reticence, any apprehension, any nerves I had, you know, walking in to say, "Hey, what the fuck am I going to say to this Gold Star mother?" Like, you're not going to say a fucking word to her. She's going to say everything she wants to you, and you're going to get the biggest hug you've ever had. And then, congratulations, you're her son. And that's about how that.
Well, man, when I was watching the documentary in the first night, after the guy recommended that I talk to you, I told my wife, I was like, "We got to watch this documentary. We got to watch this." And we put it on, and I was getting like anxiety, like going through it with you, like, "Oh man, what is this dude gonna say? Like, what do you say to these families?" Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And then what shocked me was like how it gave them closure, like an immense amount of closure. And then, like you said, they just took you in, and now all of a sudden, like, you're part of their family. And that was really cool to see how like it helped both of you.
Yeah, it's a really tragic relationship. I would wish that Dustin was home and that I took his place, so that his mom, once you see a mom without their child, that's a different world, man. There's no way to talk about that love in my life without just being very emotional about it. But they are some of the most special people on the planet, because they don't tell you you're wrong, and they don't tell you you're a bad person. It's like the only people on the planet that don't.
Right.
And that's a really cool thing to have. And you really only get that from moms, you know?
Right.
So it's just really cool to have that kind of experience with them. Damn, that's always very tough.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
No, man, no worries. It's all good. Crying's good for the soul, brother.
Yeah. I just, man, like I said, I had so many emotions watching that documentary, because like I would feel like I was in your shoes, not the physical,
Well,
I didn't have blisters, but
yeah.
I'd feel like, "Man, I don't even know what I would say," and I've been in that situation where I've talked to the Gold Star family and Gold Star spouse and stuff, but it was very awkward, and I rushed through it and I hurried to make sure I didn't have to say too much. I didn't want to say too much, so
Yeah.
yeah, that part of the documentary, as you're going through, and the families, they just listened to you, and they wanted to ask questions, and it was closure for them. And that was an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, it was even more incredible that how comfortable they all felt on camera. Everybody, all the guys. I was so worried, and a lot of the guys were worried too. Because I had hit up. We got into Nebraska. The first one I had talked to, because we didn't even start filming until Nebraska, right? Like Brian went, and anything filmed in the first part, like the first 1,300 miles, that shit's B-roll. Like we had to figure this out because he didn't learn about this until I'm, you know, a quarter of the way through the thing. So we got to figure out how to make this story work. But man, when he comes out to Nebraska, I called my buddy Gibbs and said, "Hey man, I'm on my way to you. I'm leaving Colorado now. I'll see you in, 2 weeks. I'll have a camera guy. I got to talk to you about some things." And so I talked to him and he goes, "Yeah, is this dude on the level?" And I was like, "Yeah, it'll be all right." And he goes, "All right, well then whatever. You can film and we'll figure it out." And so over the course of time, all these guys were like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I want to be on camera. I'm not sure if I want to do this." No big issue, man. You don't have to. And I can tell this guy to pound sand. And then it was just after the first one or two, they started talking to each other and they're like, "How is it?" And it's like, "No, dude, you don't even notice it. The guy's fucking in the back, shutting up. And you and
Right.
Hancock are just doing whatever the fuck you wanted to." And it's
Cool.
like, "Oh, okay, all right." And so that's really kind of how it worked. And Brian Morrison, who's like the filmmaker, he did an incredible job of making himself invisible. It was really cool to see, and how quickly all the guys accepted him to make him invisible. It was really good.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. And it's the
So,
same thing with the Gold Stars. It was almost like, yeah, great. John trusts him, then we're all fine and just be over there.
yeah. So your route, like you were saying, it changed as you were walking. What state or what area was your favorite?
For people, it's Texas. For beauty, it's probably a toss up between Idaho and Oregon. Yeah, the northern Idaho Pass, 4th of July Pass, and the Black Mountains up in northern Idaho. That's a different world, man. You should see that. I mean,
But,
I walked the Hiawatha Trail from Mullen, Idaho, all the way to Coeur d'Alene, and oh my God, Coeur d'Alene is just otherworldly. It's gorgeous, and
wow.
so that place probably. I mean, every state has something absolutely magnanimous. Montana's got Highlight Creek and Reservoir, which is, out of this world. 20 or like 12 waterfalls in 6 miles or something. It's wild. There's just so many cool places, but for people, I'd say it's Texas. They're the most hospitable, because even I'd argue that it would be South Dakota, but there's a lot of riffraff that travels through South Dakota, and so if I look like I look now, which I do, and I look like it then, and I'm wearing a ruck on my back, I look more like a homeless transient type than I do, anything else, and no matter what, the Marine Corps flag, garners attention from Marines, and there's just more Marines in Texas, I guess. So, but ultimately, Texas, for the people, I think it was a very hospitable, very nice, very welcoming state, regardless of who I spoke to. Everyone says that the Northern California coastline is gorgeous. Dude, well then just keep driving north, because Oregon's coastline shits all over Northern California. There's mountains coming out of the sea with like crag holes, and you're like, what is this? This
Yeah.
is not Earth.
Wow. So one thing I would do in the Marine Corps on like the long hikes
Yeah.
is like a way that I would get through it mentally would like I would pick a movie and try to watch
Try to
it
do the
in
whole
my head,
movie.
like from the beginning to the end. What
Try to
did
do
you
the
do
whole
on
movie.
these long walks? Like, how did you keep yourself entertained?
Yeah, I did that. I listened to music, but a lot of it, man, it wasn't really entertaining. It's more like I was just listening to myself. There's time, just sheer hours of time, where I didn't listen to anything and I was just listening to thoughts in my head, or working through memories that I was having a problem with, things that were making me cry. I continued to visit those things while I was walking to try to figure out why I'm still crying about it, 20 years later. Um, yeah, that's really what it was. It wasn't necessarily that I was trying to get through it. It was almost as if my brain was just forcing me to work through other things while I was walking. And my brain just probably gave up on the idea of quitting. And it was like, oh, we're just going to keep walking. So we'll do something else while we walk.
Right.
And
I
that's,
mean,
I mean, because I never really had an end in sight, right? Like, I didn't even know my end date was going to be, December 12th. I didn't know I was going to do it like that. I had to start really figuring out how I was going to shore up and end this walk as I was getting into the Western seaboard. And I had to really start paying attention to how many miles a day I was going to do, how many 0 days I was going to take on waterfalls or cliffs or something like that. Because let's face it, when you get a cliff as your bedroom and you're sleeping and, it's crashing waves, it's like, I could stay here for a few days.
yeah.
Or you get some gorgeous waterfall like Sophia Falls on the Pacific Crest Trail, and you're like, I don't really need to go anywhere tomorrow. So you take a couple of those days to experience and enjoy some of these places. So I really had to like tighten that up so that I could say, because once I said, okay, this walk is done, I'm hitting it on December 12th. Well, now I got to make that mission happen with all the people that I have that I've got recorded that I know I'm going to meet. Because by this point it's gained traction and everybody's told me exactly where they are. So I've kind of started to plot the last leg of this thing a little bit more definitively. And I guess that's really the point where I was like, okay, this is all hands on deck now, man, because you just made a timeline that the Marine Corps is about to fucking move on. So hope it's right and hope you did your shit right.
Yeah. 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 I know from experience, you don't want to show up to anything Marine Corps related late.
Yeah, no, not even a little bit, man. Don't be the asshole that shows up to your own thing late either.
Right. Right.
Or even worse, you're a Marine and you're like, you couldn't plan this ahead, asshole.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You got PFCs laughing at you like, dude, I just land mad like sheep shit and the alpha shelf and you can't walk on a road?
Right. Oh man. So give us like a behind the scenes. I know you told me on the phone that like you were plugging your phone in and like people's houses and stuff, man. Like what give us some of the behind the
Yeah,
scenes stuff we don't
some
see.
of the grittier stuff. Yeah, there was water is a problem on a walk, right? Across the country. Water is a problem. And water filtration is a problem. Now I have a life straw. I probably had a Walter something or another. I had probably a few different water collection and purification sources. So I wasn't in any worry of that. But it still doesn't matter if you don't have any water. And so you have to find water. And in certain places, certain times, I would see houses and be water dry. And I'd go up and knock on the house door. And if nobody was there, nobody answered, well, they still have a water spigot. So I'd just go over and fill up all my water very quickly and then run away. And there have been quite a few nights I ran up to someone's house in the middle of the night. No, I didn't rob anybody. But technically, I probably stole electricity from them because I plugged my phone in to one of their outdoor outlets on the outside of their home, and then snuck away to go sleep wherever I was sleeping, and then snuck back to go retrieve it later. Yeah, I had to do a lot of that. If you walk across the country, you're going to trespass, and you're going to trespass a lot. And because most of this country is purchased, and it's wild when you see it. And every road, everything is, this is private property, this is that, this is this. And I can't count the amount of times I've been told to either get off the land or that this is my land and that I'm the only one that can allow you on it. And an ego thing. And then it's
Right.
fine, you can be on my land. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Sorry.
Right.
But yeah, it's there have been a lot of really hairy close calls with homeless, especially in California, down anywhere along the Russian River. There's just homeless encampments everywhere. And, when you're walking through and you've got nice gear, it's worth a little bit of coin. They want to take it from you. And so there have been a few times where homeless people attempted to take things from me and it didn't work out well for them. Whatever. So it was bad, but you just gotta run and pray and hope that, they don't fucking come after you anymore. Cause it's a pretty weird underbelly when you start walking across the country and you think in places that you wouldn't think there would be any homeless. There's homeless communes. Like
Yeah.
in the middle of the Sand Hills, Nebraska, right? Sand Hills, by the way, is one of the largest deserts. It's bigger than I think it's bigger than the Mojave, but it's only a desert for half the year.
Oh wow.
Because it's grassland, the other part. So it's a weird place. It's a really weird place. It's really cool too, and it's a massive flyway for all these birds. So you'll see massive flyways of birds and just all these different birds and butterflies and everything's flying through there. Very cool to see, but you would think you'd be out in the middle of no man's land, right? Because there's some ranches out there, and you see a house every now and again dotting the horizon, but it's a little farmhouse, right? And man, out in the middle of those areas, there were homeless encampments and just transients like going through, and then you start realizing the level of transient behavior that is happening across America and how they're getting around and what they're doing, and it's actually pretty scary. So I got introduced to that in a big way, and
Wow.
was identified as a transient quite a few times by police, and then had to tell them what the fuck I was doing. Yeah, because they were, I think in Portland or in Salem, Oregon, homeless dude had accosted me. I had kept it pushing. The homeless dude told a cop that I'm a homeless dude and that I stole his backpack. So the cops show up to me and they're like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hello." And they tell me this story about how I can't take I can't take another guy's bag. And I'm like, I didn't take anybody's bag. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This homeless dude's been behind me for an hour yelling at me about a sandwich. And then he like tried to throw a fucking bag of something at me. I dodged it. Just leave me alone, man. And they're like, okay, no worries. It's fine. But there were quite a few times where cops would tell me about, and they were telling me about it in Salem. Hey, you need to be really careful because sometimes the cops will just pick you up and then they'll just bring you to the train station and then, or not to the train, to the bus station. And then they'll just wait with you there with a sheriff's deputy until you and like 100 others get on the bus. And they just send homeless people with one-way tickets somewhere else in the country. And that's how they deal with their homeless problem. And that's how I figured that out while I was walking around and then being labeled as a homeless dude. And I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Yeah. Ship me off to somewhere. Like, don't do that, dude. I'm going to have to walk from there. That's going to be really a big bummer.
Be stuck in a loop.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a serious underbelly when you inject yourself into every day across America, on the road, you're going to see some wild shit.
Yeah, I bet. And I'm sure you encounter some pretty dangerous situations, maybe not just with people, but the
Oh,
elements.
animals as well. Absolutely. I mean, the only animal I did not come into contact with in North America was the grizzly bear, and I am okay with that.
Yeah, that's true.
Totally okay with that. I don't need to see one. It's cool if I could see one from a car. That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need to see one when I am literally a fucking soft taco to that thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm not playing that game. But yeah, I got treed by a moose and in Washington State. I got stalked by a cougar for about 2 days in Oregon. Met a white wolf on the top of the Bighorns in Sheridan, Wyoming.
Wow.
A black bear nuzzled on my head through my sleeping bag when I was in, what is that? It's west of Asheville, North Carolina. Can't remember the little town, but it butts up into the Smokies, and so there's bears everywhere. But it's a black bear. It's not a grizzly bear.
Wow. Still
So
pretty
yeah, I
terrible.
mean, yeah, lots of animals, lots of snake bites. Thank God none of them are poisonous. But yeah, encounters with rattlesnakes, absolutely. Encounters with scorpions, tarantulas, and the like, absolutely.
Wow.
So
I mean, obviously you experienced some weather through this too.
yeah, some real brutal weathers, a couple flash blizzards in Nebraska and South Dakota, blinding rainstorms in Wyoming with wind that I have never felt before. When they say 70-mile-an-hour wind, and that's normal to them. I don't understand that, but man, that wind hit differently, and it was cold, and so it just cuts into you, and it debilitated me. I got to a point where I was using my walking stick as like an oar to like hold me up as I was trying
Wow.
to walk. I gave up and I was like, I won't be able to walk in this. It's 70-mile-an-hour winds. So I just laid down in the culvert on the side of the road and prayed that trucks didn't flip over into the ditch.
Wow, man,
Yeah,
that's
it
crazy.
was wild.
Yeah, that's nuts. And I think about it too. Like you walked through Colorado. That's where I'm at, and all the
Yeah.
mountains and the hills, and like I mean, some of the terrain had to be pretty rough throughout there
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
right?
I didn't start crossing mountains until so I had gone up from Texas through Colorado, and then I had hooked east. But I had stayed on the east side of the Rockies, right? Like Aurora and Denver, and then out to God, what is it? Fort Collins up north a little bit from Denver, and then I headed east to like out there, like Crook and Sedgwick and all that,
Okay, yeah,
because I was heading out towards Nebraska. So I was walking away from the mountains. I didn't hit real mountains until I had come back and gotten to Sheridan, Wyoming. Once I crossed the Bighorns, that's when I was like, okay, these are real mountains.
yeah. Wow,
And then after I crossed the Bighorns, then, going in through, what are those? The Crazies out in Montana, and then, over Missoula and up through that corridor and into Idaho. The 4th of July Pass and the Black Mountains up there, those some big sons of bitches. So it was really neat, but man, it was some difficult elevation at times for sure.
I bet. What was your average? Like how much movement were you making per day?
Like in the beginning, the East Coast is probably a good 25 to 30 miles a day,
Wow.
right? Because it's mostly flat. And I was excited and I was working through pain and blisters and just trying to find the motivation. So it was probably more about 25 to 30 a day. When I got into the Midwest, it was probably more like 20 to 25 a day. And then when I started getting into the mountainous stuff, it went down more towards, 15, 18 a day. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to kill myself. I'm just trying to get through it. And there was no reason for me to hit a 30-mile day through, on the Pacific Crest Trail. That I saw guys do it, and that's great, but that's not my realm. That's not my world. And that guy was running, a 12-pound ruck with ultralight everything, freezing at night when he's sleeping. And I'm over here with an 82-pound ruck. Like I'm not doing
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
I'll see you never again and enjoy.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get that. So tell us, you had some. I mean, obviously, you got some experience with gear. What kind of gear was the good gear that you had, or saved you throughout this, and what would you recommend people don't get?
If you're gonna do, I didn't have good luck with goal zero anything for like anything that touted some sort of ability to charge a phone to its to 100%. I never found that to be true. Not with Goal Zero, not with Solar Monkey, not with any of them. Now maybe they've gotten better since then, but I got away from all that. But also I got away from tech in general when I go hiking. So I would say gear wise, leave your phone at home and bring an inReach. You just get an inReach GPS. You can get one with a communicative ability, either text or phone. Get one of those and then just shove it away, and then you only need it when you need it. And then just experience the world. I think gear wise, from a ruck perspective, I had gone through REI's co-op because I'm a member of REI, and so I had an Osprey that a buddy gave me, and he got it from REI, and it was okay. It was a 60 liter, but I needed something bigger, and so I went to REI when I got to when I got to North Carolina to Raleigh. I'd gone into the REI in Raleigh, and I'd picked up a couple pairs of shoes that I was using at the time, and then I picked up a new ruck and I got an 85 liter from REI. It was a few years ago. They don't sell that massive thing anymore, but I still have it. So I'm a big fan of big rucks. because I like to go for long distances and I like to bring all the things I want. So if I guess really about gear, it's really about what you want and try to go as lightweight as possible. And so I use like all my utensils or all my dishes for eating are all Snow Peak because they're all like super, super lightweight metal stuff. Highly durable, great in a fire, great just anywhere. Let's see, I always use trekking poles. Anybody that doesn't is it's just old school, man. Just get with the times. Use the trekking poles. They're gonna save your knees. They're gonna save your hips. Just do it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is doing it. Just be cool. Okay.
Right. Right.
My water purification, I go for Grail, Grayl. Their stuff is by far the best water purification thing you can get. And they've got a boatload of different suites. You could use MSR as well. They're awesome as well. And then let's see here. Always carry a fire starter, and I carried a for the period of time on the Hiawatha River on that trail from Idaho basically to Washington to like Spokane Valley. I carried a small lodge pan. That's a dumb idea for sure. That was a whole piece of 10 pounds that I didn't need. But I carried this stupid small dish lodge pan because I had a telescoping rod and reel with just a spoon on it, and I would just cast and drag and see if I'd catch a fucking trout. More times than not, I did. So I'm glad I had a little. I'm glad I had a little lodge pan, so I could just throw it in the lodge and throw it on the fire. And yeah, it was my burden to bear and walk with, but at the end of the day, it made me feel nice. And then as soon as I was away from trout fresh or, trout abundant rivers, I was like, I don't need this thing anymore. You can have it here. You want a lodge fan? Here, take this.
I can only imagine it.
Yeah, I shed so much gear throughout this thing because you can imagine like people would try to give me gear. One guy gave me a tent that I did not need. And I tried, like he gave it to me in Washington. And then he was like, I'm going to be down in Oregon. And then I'm going to be down in California and I'll see you. And I was like, damn it, I don't want to use this tent. And I kept this fucking tent for like 3 weeks because he did show up another time at a different campsite of mine. Like he saw me walking and he was like, hey, and I was like getting ready to bed down for the night. And he's like, oh, you're still using my tent. I'm glad it, works out. And I'm like, it's not fucking working out. Your tent sucks. And I just throw it under my ruck every night and I just use my bag and my tarp.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, there was a piece missing. He swore it wasn't and that I could use it this way. It didn't work. I never saw him again. The next day I got up, I looked at this stupid thing and I was like, I'm throwing it the fuck out. So I found the next available dumpster at, the local Family Dollar, which are surprisingly everywhere across America. I bought Pedialyte so many times from Family Dollars all over the country.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, gear wise, spend the money, get the good stuff. Merrells for my feet always.
Yeah.
I tried Hokas. Hokas are great, but they're not great for, throwing extra weight on your ruck or on your back and then, using them. They're great for trail running or just trail walking, but you start adding, 50, 60 pounds, they're not going to do anything for you.
Right. Merrells are a little more, got a bit more grip on them too, I'm sure.
Yeah. They're Vibram soles and they've got a couple different things going for them. I've got, 2 or 3 pairs of Moabs and some others. They're good.
Yeah. Big time. So how many miles total was it for you?
307 official logged miles. However, that number is a little bit higher, and I estimate it's probably somewhere into the. Well, I'll never estimate it. I'll let somebody who doesn't believe that I walk 5807 do the fact check for me. But ultimately, I had a lot of turnarounds, and a lot of times I walked the same distance for a long period of time, either working with Brian to film this thing, or I got turned around by a cop in Falls City, Idaho, and he said I couldn't walk down this damn fire or logging road and that I had to turn around. And so I had to do another, 30 miles out and then turn around and then come back through a different way. And then, so there was quite a lot of that rerouting that had to happen due to either private land or trespassing or anything. So I got turned around quite a lot.
Wow.
But those turnarounds or those like doubling over of mileages, I never counted.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, so 5,807 miles is from my house in College Park to the 5th Marine War Memorial in Pendleton along my very specific route.
Wow. And who organized the ending for you? Was that something that somebody had reached out to you and set up?
The family readiness officer had heard about it through, the internet. And he reached out to me in the middle of the walk. I was probably around South Dakota, I think. And I told him what I was doing. And he was like, yeah, I'd love to support. We'll figure it out. And then we'll go from there. Unbeknownst to me, by the time I had gotten towards the end of the walk, one of my junior Marines had stayed in and was now the first sergeant for Fox Company 2-4.
Wow.
So he ended up being at the end and he coordinated a lot of it. So that was actually really cool. So it was kind of a full circle closed loop, if you will,
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. And when you got to Pendleton, was that on the Alpha Shelf where you guys carried that up, or where was that?
No. That's over on First Sergeant's Hill.
Okay.
So behind Mateo.
Gotcha. And that's where 2-4 is at, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Gotcha.
2-4 is with 5th Marines out of 62 area Mateo.
So I know that terrain obviously from SOI, climbing all those hills and
Oh yeah,
spending countless days out there for
yeah.
whatever reasons. What a way to end it, man. Like, be there and have to hike one more mountain to get to the top of it.
Yeah. It was just funny too, right? Like I'm sitting there, I'm looking up, and I'm like, I'd done the speech, everybody's kind of adjourned, and the Marine Corps said, you're not allowed, like, if you're an active duty Marine, you're not allowed to go up there with those guys.
Wow.
And I just kind of looked at that. I was like, why is that? And they said, well, because there's no safety vehicle and we can't control anything. We can't tell you you're not allowed to go, but it's a training area. And like, if the Marines are going to use it, they have to like submit an ORM. No, I'm like, okay, I don't think any of them are going to listen to you. And he said, yeah, you're probably right. And sure as shit, we start walking up the damn hill, and there's a fucking battalion of active duty Marines hanging out, just walking. You're like, okay, they're all coming. And it was a boatload of people. It was really cool. And that's just Marines being Marines, I guess. They did look at me and they go, you gonna bring your ruck up to the top? And I was like, absolutely not. My ruck stays here. I've already done so many mountains with this thing. I'm not doing First Sergeant's Hill with this thing. You're out of your mind.
Right. Hey, you gonna walk across country with me?
Right. Yeah. Like everybody has all these things to say about it. Like, oh yeah, you should have done this. I'm like, where were you on day one, homie?
Yeah. I had a lot of lonely nights out there. Where were you?
Yeah, there was a boatload of lonely nights. While you're like, hey, you're doing a good job, brother.
Right. Yeah. Hey, keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Right. And you're like, man, and that was always a weird thing. I never looked at it like that until right now, as we're just joking about it. But yeah, I can imagine now. I'm like, shit, all these people are in their warm house.
Yeah.
So proud of you. And I looked at it as like I'm freezing, and I'm like, oh, that's good. Somebody's proud of me. And
Motivation comes from all places, man.
dude, it does too. It does too.
So, man, that's crazy. Were you surprised at the outcome of the documentary when you finally watched it?
No, because I had my hand in it for a long time. I was a consulting producer on it. So Brian and I went round and round and round about a lot of things on this film. And there's a lot of guys involved in this film that were doing really good stuff. And that all the music's originally scored by a few guys, and like everything in this thing is original and owned, except for I think that Taylor Swift song, and I think there's one other song blip in there that isn't owned by us. But yeah, other than that, this whole thing is owned by Brian and the guys who created it. It's a one-off self-contained content, which is really neat. And so I was able to put my stamp on a lot of things and give them information to help them make the right decisions without offending the Marine Corps, because the I could give a shit about the Marine Corps as like a DoD structure, but when I say offend the Marine Corps, I mean it's people. And so, there were a couple fucking edits of this thing where I was like, that is not happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you were thinking, but this isn't the game we're playing at all.
Right.
So I had I had a lot to do with it, which was nice. So I had a good warm and fuzzy going into it. I didn't know it was going to do as well as it did inside all the film festivals. I
Yeah.
mean, it came out of the gate swinging. It won the Santa Barbara International Film Festival for Best Documentary, and then it won Slam Dance out of Sundance. Like, those are the first two wins. And you're like, holy shit, we really have something here. And then COVID hit and, shut everything down. And we pivoted to some sort of online film festival type platform. And everybody just started watching films at home online. And we still won a shitload of film festivals. And we're number one on Apple iTunes for like 3 weeks. I think we're still 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
And we like a no slab 7.5 on IMDb. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
But it's surprising with all those numbers at how few people have actually seen the film.
Yeah. And for those watching or listening, Bastards Road is the name of the documentary. Go check it out. It's awesome. Like I said, I've watched it a few times now because in preparation for this, but also, I didn't want to miss anything. It was pretty intense, and it's a great film, man. Are you guys still doing any documentaries or working on
No,
any
that's
documentaries?
a one-off for me. I don't know what Brian's up to right now. He's doing a couple things, I'm sure. But that's just one piece for me. I think it's neat. I will never desire to be in that realm again. The amount of glad handing and the the lies and the people that try to like lash themselves up to your ship to try to ride coattails. It's bonkers. It's very wild. And you just see once again, you get to see a different underbelly, and the underbelly of making a film and bringing it to market and attempting to get sponsorship or distribution, is fucking cutthroat, and, it's vile, and
Wow.
it ruins people, and it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of money from the creators, gives them nothing. It's wild. So it's cool that it's out there, and I'm glad that it is, and I'm glad that I was a part of this thing, and I'm glad that this walk happened, and that I completed it for my own devices and my own needs. But yeah, I don't feel the need to ever try to do that again.
Yeah.
And I'm just a producer on the damn thing. Like those, like dealing with it from the owner and creator of it is a totally different perspective. So I'm glad I didn't have to. I don't endeavor to do that ever again.
So what did you get out of it the most?
A realization that life is going to be tough, and that you are very much capable of dealing with anything it throws you. And I think that's what I got out of it. Because I didn't have that for a while, and I had lost that. I had lost the ability. Maybe I'd gone towards like this weak side of the house where I'm, oh no, I can't, or I won't, or, it's hard or something like that. And I think this gave me a little bit more of that. But I will tell you that those feelings are fleeting, right? You can't hold on to, I can't hold on to this walk and say, this walk still does this thing for me. I think it's evolutionary. I think it showed me some things that I had to work on, and now it's on me to figure out how to do it. And so I've done that in a lot of respects, but in some other respects, maybe I haven't, right? Like let's fast forward a little bit and show you that I'm now working, right? Because we said earlier that I was working for the course that I had gone through to create an elevated certification for myself. Well, that course still exists. That course has changed names, but I'm an instructor and a lead for that course. When I teach the realm of surveillance detection and a few other things inside that. But ultimately, what what I am learning about myself is that I have to fully shed armor, and I haven't done that. I was able to shed armor from the Marine Corps from my time in through the walk, right? I was able to give myself to others. Others were able to give themselves to me in trust and friendship and experience. And I was able to see different things from that. I was able to see what my service did and then how I was supposed to evolve from my service and keeping friendships while getting away from the Marine Corps, not distancing in some way of like, oh, forget about it, but distancing yourself in a way in which you're progressing into something more, because you can't ever just be one thing in the past. Like that's, if you hark on, if you just, I'm this thing, right? Well, then cool, dude, you're the high school quarterback that peaked, or you're the PFC that peaked in combat, or whatever it is. Like you're peaking too early, man. And it can hurt you. And I think the thing that I'm realizing now is that I have to get away from all of it as a whole to continue to progress. Because what I'm finding is that while I work, and again, I hate to toot my horn, but I think I'm a pretty okay instructor. I also notice the intense amount of memory and memory recall that is required of me to explain something through an experiential base, or to explain how something has actually happened versus what it would say in a book, or to explain why something would happen in the way in which it would happen. And that memory recall is training me again, because it's not that it's new emotions or new memories coming up that I haven't worked through. It's the same fucking memories that I've worked through for many, many years. And it seems to just be a place in which I'm spinning around the same problem set that isn't doing anything for me in my own growth anymore. So I think that's the big piece, right? That and understanding the growth mentality you have to have after service. Resting on laurels from service will only get you so far.
Yeah.
Shucking or shedding the Marine uniform, putting down, like shedding the armor, putting down the weapons, metaphorically speaking, and moving into something new and scary is probably beneficial. Because, and I kind of look at it this way, right? Like growing up, you're 18 and then you go off to the Marine Corps, right? And now you stay in the Marine Corps for X amount of years. Let's say you stay in the Marine Corps for 10 years, right? So you're 28 years old now. You're 28 in the Marine Corps for sure. And you even probably have some ability to work through the civilian world, right? Because you got a wife, maybe, you got some kids, maybe, you're dealing with schools, you're dealing with groceries, you're dealing with day-to-day minutia that would require you to be somewhat injected to the civilian world. But you're not really injected into the civilian world. You're still a Marine, right? And so when you get out as that 28-year-old Marine, I feel like there's an argument to be made that you actually go back to, you devolve and you're actually back at like an 18-year-old, right? Because you have the same requisite knowledge of an 18-year-old moving into the civilian world, even though you are a Marine and you spent 10 years doing whatever you've done. So it's almost like you've got to go backwards and do it over again. And I think that can be a benefit, but it's also very scary. But I have found that holding into something that, putting myself in a position in a job occupation that is so very mirrored, well, it's not mirrored, it's the exact thing that I did in this world. And now I'm just training the next group of espionage professionals to do it. That's the piece that weighs. And that's the piece I think that I'm still trying to figure out how to get out of. And that's with, new job opportunities and things along the way of finding something outside of what you're good at. The problem that I'm running into is I don't know what I'm good at. I don't know what I'm good at outside of this, and I'm having a real hard time.
Yeah.
And that's a real piece in my book right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely sympathize with that. I know, and it's not just us, like you talk to other veterans, one thing you'll find is they struggle in the workforce because, you know, we want to get out of the military because we don't want to do that anymore. It's hard on our body, it's hard on our minds. But then we get out and we realize, man, I don't really want to sit at a desk either. Like,
Right.
you know, so um, very difficult transition. And I think that's a piece that a lot of veterans underestimate too. Like they think,
Yeah, no, I did. I know I underestimated it because I looked at that whole tamp and tap thing, and I had to stay in for one day, and then the lady was going to sign off for my entire 2 week portion. So I sat in there for one day, and we had I mean, the iPhone was pretty big by then. I'm pretty sure I had one. Yeah, for sure. I think I had like the iPhone 3. It was
yeah,
still small, but I remember playing like whatever the game was back in the day, Candy Crush or whatever it was. I was playing it and I wasn't listening to whatever guest speakers were up there talking about that exact thing, talking about how the transition is actually going to be more difficult for you. You have a higher rate of failure, and you need to pay attention to this. And I immediately was like, I'm good. I don't need to pay attention to that
yeah,
because I got accepted to college and I'm smarter than you and I'm going to go do awesome shit. And
yeah,
that's like, I can remember saying those kinds of things.
yeah.
And now I'm like, wow, you stupid kid.
Oh no, man. Yeah.
You stupid fucking kid.
You put it well though. Like you do go back to like an 18-year-old version of yourself because uh you have to find a way to make that transition work. And you don't know anything other than the Marine Corps for the past how many ever years it was for you.
Right.
And that's a totally different life, man. My wife, she had a like anxiety attack over like people after because she was with me through the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And living on base and everything. And she, when we moved back to Arizona, actually, in our hometown, and we were just like, holy crap, these people are not the same we've been hanging out with for the past 5 years. Like,
Right.
totally
Right.
different. So,
Yeah, everybody grows and evolves, and the Marine Corps or military service in general probably stops that. I felt it stopped that for me a little bit, not in a negative way. It's just that you're growing in a different way. You're
yeah,
growing to learn how to fight war. Like
yeah,
that's you're an infantryman. You're growing in a way in which you're learning to be a war fighter, and then now you're growing in a way in which you're learning to be a collector of an intelligence and a manipulator of sorts. And so you're trying to figure that world out.
right,
And then, you leave to the end of it and it goes, okay, none of those things, you can't do any of those things here.
right.
Well, that really sucks because I'm really good at all of those things. Yeah. And so it's, life passes you by because military service is important, but it isn't the same thing as living in the civilian world.
No, not at all. Now, the trainings that you offer is that just for military guys, or I mean, can
Yeah. It's
anybody
all,
do?
It's all DoD based, so you have to have orders to come to us. There are some civilians that come to us through different programs. We've had one or two over the course of years in some way, shape, or form, maybe a law enforcement professional or an FBI professional somewhere along the way, maybe. But by and large, it's a DoD course
Right. Okay. Makes sense. I mean, how much do you think those operations are still going on globally
daily.
daily? Crazy.
Daily, absolutely. The intelligence community never sleeps. And that's the only way in which we're going to continue to provide information to, so the commander in chief can make the most informed decision, or that the combatant commander can make the most informed decision that they can. So those types of operations, those types of things that intelligence professionals are doing behind the curtains, those are happening all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it puts into perspective, because like I said, in Afghanistan, you guys were running around, you were secretive. We didn't know what you guys were doing. We weren't allowed to know what you guys were doing. Um, and to think like that's still going on globally, all over the place,
Yeah.
kind of puts in perspective again, you know, we're good at what we do. People might not believe that, but America is pretty good at what we do.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. The adversary is very capable though. And we are working through real problem sets that are changing even some of our training initiatives inside a course.
Yeah. Pretty
that
crazy.
course lasts 120 days, and it's, I'm like, hey, on day 83, hey, we're seeing this, so let's start working through this problem set versus training it the way we have.
So it's pretty fluid.
It has to be.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So
And
there's still baseline, everything along the way, but there are certain things that when they come up and it's like, we're not doing that right now. So maybe let's not do that.
yeah. So how do you stay on top of everything? Obviously, intelligence community, you guys all communicate with one another.
There is communication, but I guess at this point I'm in the training pipeline, right? So I'm a government contractor now with a top secret clearance. That's fine, but my need to know to the outside intelligence community is not huge. I have a need to know and an ability to work inside a training command to produce intelligence professionals now. But those people do talk to each other. And as a whole, the intelligence community has gotten leaps and bounds better at communicating and cross talking. There's still a lot of stovepiping. There's still a lot of, holding on to this is my little precious thing. And it gets people killed when they do that. So I don't know why people do that.
Yeah.
But it happens. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it's still absolutely a problem. I'm hoping for some sort of change in that once people start realizing that it can be changed, and the crosstalk of intelligence communities should be a whole lot more robust than it is.
Yeah. So other than that, I know you're doing that, but you also have a nonprofit. Tell us about what you do with that, man.
And it's called Bastards Road Project, and I did that so that it would get confused between that and the movie, so that at least everything would always be found. And so I started it 5 years ago, and I knew what benefit this walk had for me. I knew that guys couldn't do something like 5,800 miles. Like, you can't take a year and a half off of your life. So I boiled it down and figured out how to get veterans to come out and hike anywhere from 30 to 50 miles over the course of a weekend or 3 days, and just really experience what I went through. And they get to experience that on their own. And by doing so, they started to work through let's call it a cognitive behavioral therapy with like an ambulatory nodule attached to it. So I just, I created a really long drawn out mission statement that explains that, but it's truncated, and we just say walk long distances, figure some shit out. So I take vets up to Zion National Park, and we do the West Rim Trail of the Zion Traverse over the course of 2 days, and then we walk the Narrows, and then we do a day at Bryce Canyon. So all in all, they do about 35, 40 miles over 3 days, 4 days. So a real good time. They get to camp. They get to see Zion like nobody else has seen Zion. And so it's just a really good experience for them to start working through some of their own issues.
I bet, man. You seeing the same effect in them that it had on you?
I see it all the time.
That's
For
great.
the ones that make it, right? Like, and I'm not saying the guys don't make it when they come out with me, but the ones that finally get to me, because when you think about offering a nonprofit service to veterans like hiking, it comes with a lot of problems. And you can't just take a veteran and say, hey, in 3 weeks, I'm going to take you on 43 miles. And we're going to do it at a rate of 10 to 13 miles a day. You will carry 50 pounds on your back. Nobody's doing it. And
Right.
nobody's making it through that. Well, some of them will for sure, but that wouldn't, if my goal was to make everybody fall out, that's how I would do it. But what ends up having to happen is I've created so I employed one of my 2-4 Marines that now lives in Australia, and he's a big fitness influencer. I talked to him and said, hey man, build me a program for a guy that's got to get off a couch and walk and be able to do 40 miles in a weekend or in an elongated weekend, and give me a training pipeline that would accomplish that dude's goal in like a 3-month pipeline. And he said, okay. So he worked through it and then handed it to me. I ran it and I was like, yeah, this was fine. It's just a lot of walking.
Yeah.
there's a lot of body weight exercises, but a lot of it is stretching and a lot of it's walking. And ultimately we were monitoring guys and, hey, you gotta keep up with this and you gotta do these things. And if you don't, I can't take in I've never had a full tiered roster on any of my hikes because guys just inevitably drop out over the course of time. They get in their own heads and think they can't do it. I try to talk them off a ledge. That may or may not work. They've got family things. People have lives. So, they got family shit that comes up. They can't do it. I got that too. But mostly it stems from a real feeling of not being able to do it or letting themselves or somebody else down. And I know that because the ones that actually come out have that same feeling, express that same feeling, and then are fucking dumbfounded when they express that feeling and they go, "Oh shit, I just did this. Like, I didn't think I could do this. I just did it." And I'm like, "Yeah, you just did it. Look at that. That's amazing."
Yeah.
So it's just, have been saddened by the amount of people that have kind of like bailed on the back end, just gone, "Okay, I can't do it." And I'm like, "Oh man, really?" So we're working through a couple issues to try to figure out how to get that attrition rate down. And so that'll be kind of taken on in the new year to see what we do and how we, go about stopping that from happening. Because I'd love to get more guys out. I've never had a hike of 8. I've only had a hike of, I think I had a hike of 7 one time. I've had a hike of 5, quite a few hikes of 3, and one of 2. So, it's one hike a year, maybe twice a year, depending on, my work schedule and everything else and how we can coordinate these things. But we're still going, and it's a great thing to do. And I don't want to stop it. It has to morph. So we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah. And one thing you talked with me about prior to this was that you want to break down that border between combat veterans and veterans. And I'm big into that.
I'm a proponent of it, right? Like I've said that, and I've said it as a demonstrative delineation between two groups. I've shown people why it exists, because it does exist. People will say, "Hell, my wife still says I'm a combat vet," and I'm like, "Stop saying that."
Right.
And I'm not mad at her, but I'm trying to like retrain myself to do that. Because at the end of the day, dude, you're a veteran, and I got that combat veterans and veterans are different people. And that person will tell you that all on their own. There's zero reason for you to create a line in the sand that says, "Well, he got to do his job more than you did."
Right.
And I think that's really the thing, because at the end of the day, and I've always said it, and I'll continue to say it, combat's a lottery, and you don't know when or if you'll pull the winning ticket. And when you do, nothing fucking matters anymore. And you don't even know if you're going to live through it. So, you don't even know if you actually pulled that ticket because you died. Right. Like, so at the end of the day, you're touting yourself off as a combat veteran. All you're saying is, "Oh, I'm a lucky veteran."
Yeah.
I find it more fun and more engaging to talk with people that don't have monikers and nicknames or things that they put on themselves to make themselves feel better. And I think combat veteran is one of them. I think it's one that is driven out of ego. And I think people say he's a combat veteran to denote that you are somehow more heartily tested than someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's no doubt that like if you and I had just gone to boot camp and that was it, like we still would have been a different person after boot camp. That doesn't change, like of course combat changed us, no doubt about it. But we are not the same 18-year-olds,
Right.
who join the Marine Corps and then 13 weeks later after boot camp, you're a different person.
Right.
So
yeah. And I guess it's just a shame that we've done it that way, but we have, and we as veterans also stand idly by when it's said. I don't do it anymore. When people are like, "You're a combat veteran," I'm like, "I'm just a veteran, man, just a veteran."
yeah.
And if they take that away as like, "Oh, you're not a combat veteran," well then, cool, man, go on with your day, because I don't really need to talk to you.
Right. Yeah. So you take veterans of all kinds on these hikes with you.
For sure. Absolutely.
How do people get involved? How do they find you?
bastardsroadproject.org. You can find me there. You can send me any message you want there, and I can illuminate you to the ideas and the things that would be needed for you to kind of work through this process and be a part of one of those hikes. Absolutely.
Awesome.
But it's not a application process, and the reason for that is, well, it's only one fold really, and it's because the amount of fake stolen valor people in this world that are trying to catch any benefit off of military service is astounding. And I opened it up. I opened up the first hike to applications, and I got something like, I don't know, 150, 200 DD214s that do not look like DD214s.
Oh no.
And I mean, they're ridiculous. And you're reading through some of these narratives and you're like, this guy, what is this? This is not even Jesus. And so I scrapped it and I said, okay, no, that's not happening. So we go by referral only. So it's usually what ends up happening are people that have been on the hikes will refer someone else, and that's great. But also anyone that I know, or anyone that any of my board of directors knows, and they know that they're service, then they can use their name to recommend someone. And of course, the investigation and due diligence is still gone through, and we still look through your record and see whether or not you're, if you say you are who you are. But it's an easier process.
Yeah.
And it's a much shorter process because that guy says you're a Marine or you're an Army guy. That's great. I served with that guy. I trust that guy. And, so it's a little bit easier that way for me.
Yeah. People don't realize, man, that like, that's what causes us so many problems with the VA is all the stolen valor, all the people trying to get benefits that don't need it, or,
Yep.
It makes everybody else, it just clogs up the system.
Oh, hell, I think I can count at least 5. I know at least 5 service members that are 100% service connected that have never been to combat.
Wow.
Pretty amazing, right?
That's very lucky.
Yeah, and if I know 5, then I'd venture to say you probably know a few and you don't even know it.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I've known a few that didn't leave the United States and have service connected ratings, and it's
pretty wild. The VA is wrought with fraud, so
yeah, it's unfortunate, man.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's been a pleasure, man. I really appreciate you doing this with me, and I hope we got really deep and dirty into it, and I hope everybody enjoys it. But again, man, thank you for everything you're doing and you keep doing. Thank you for the documentary. It was great to watch. We'll probably watch it a couple more times, but it's been a pleasure, man. You're a great human being. You're doing great things, and you're inspiring. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks, brother, and likewise. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to tell a story. It's a pleasure to help you, and I'll do all that. And if the byproduct of any of that is helping veterans, then I'm fucking set.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and if you want to shoot over the link to your nonprofit, we'll make sure we post that for you, and hopefully we can get you a hike of 8 at least.
Yeah, I'd love it, man. I'd love it. Just once, just fucking get off the couch, do the fucking walks every day for 3 months, and then come and see the most beautiful shit on the planet. I promise you, it'll change your life.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And you're saying it's, having the great side effect of helping people through their troubles, man. Like, why not? Why not go? Yeah. All you got to do is walk.
That's it. That's all you got to do. I do the rest, I promise.
Easy enough, man.
Yeah.
All right, John. Well, thank you, man.
Thanks so much, brother. Thanks so much for having me. And I look forward to seeing you when you're on episode 500 or so.
Yeah.
And you got yourself a fucking badass studio and you're smoking cigars. And I'm like, hey, can I come back?
Yeah. And I could be like Joe Rogan and be like, yo, Jamie, pull that up.
Right. It'd be funny.
Pull up that documentary.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, man. Thanks.
Sounds good, brother.
All right. Take care.
Later.